The United Nations, a loudspeaker with no power button. Let's stop lying to each other. A border goes hot, again, between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Artillery, airstrikes, rockets, bodies, civilians running with nothing but dust in their lungs and fear in their mouths, trade routes slammed shut, crossings barricaded, men with guns measuring every heartbeat like it's contraband. And right on cue, the United Nations clears its throat, leans into the microphone, and says the one thing it always says: "We urge restraint." Beautiful, powerful. History will tremble at the force of those verbs. Urge, restraint. Two words that stop absolutely nothing. It's like telling a hurricane to be mindful. Meanwhile, the death count climbs. In Kandahar and Kurram, people do the same old choreography. Duck, run, bleed, pray. Hospitals fill, the border hardens like scar tissue. And somewhere in New York, Geneva, Nairobi, pick a glass building, someone drafts a statement that sounds indistinguishable from the last 10 statements because it is the last 10 statements cloned and stapled to a new date. Tell me again, what is the point of paying for an international referee that can't blow the whistle, can't stop the fight, and can't bench the players? We've seen this movie in HD. Ukraine, a Security Council that can't secure anything when one of the 5 permanent members is the arsonist with a veto. Sudan, a capital city turned to a soundstage for militias while blue-flagged agencies count the dead and call for dialogue. The Democratic Republic of Congo, decades of UN presence, and yet armed groups multiply like rumours. Now the Afghanistan-Pakistan frontier snarls, and the UN does what it does best, expresses concern with exquisite grammar. Here's the boredom behind the outrage. The UN is designed to be weak where you most need it strong. It is a cathedral of polite paralysis. It has secretariats with bullet-pointed ambitions and Security Council tables polished to a diplomatic shine, but when it's time to stop a missile mid-air, the only thing it can launch is a press release. I'm not asking for miracles, I'm asking for power, real power, the kind that saves a child in Spin Boldak today, not after a commission completes a study in 6 months and discovers, brace yourself, that bombs hurt. Let's lay out the facts as they are, not as we wish them to be. Across that border, the pattern's familiar. Pakistan says Afghan forces targeted its posts. The Taliban say Pakistan struck first. Civilians die either way. Crossings like Torkham and Chalman close, strangling commerce and slicing lifelines that feed families on both sides. Aid convoys stall behind gates guarded by men whose only language is escalation. A temporary truce gets declared for 48 hours, the diplomatic equivalent of asking a forest fire to take a tea break. And by the time ink dries on the word ceasefire, someone's already testing the edges of the promise with a mortar. And the UN, it counts, it urges, it condemns in the strongest terms, which, to be honest, is an unintentionally hilarious phrase. The strongest terms, what are the weak ones then? A bit miffed. Rather cross. Meanwhile, people are collecting shrapnel like unwanted souvenirs. Here's what every ordinary person understands instantly. Words don't move tanks. Statements don't shut down launchers. Tweets with blue logos don't open humanitarian corridors. There needs to be the credible threat of consequence. The kind of consequence that makes a commander decide that today is not the day to make the river red. But the UN cannot credibly threaten anything without the consent of the very governments the threat would target. That's the tragic gag. The club only swings if the suspect hands it over and says, "Please hit me." Failing that, you're left with diplomacy performed as theatre, a solemn arrangement of adjectives where action should be. Is it unfair to call the UN useless? No, it's generous. Useless implies it does nothing. In reality, it does something worse. It creates the illusion that something is being done. That illusion sedates the public. It gives politicians an alibi to go home and say, well, we raised the issue at the United Nations, as though raising the issue raised the dead. Let's talk money, since you asked why we're paying people to send emails we could write ourselves. Member states pour billions into the UN family. The Secretariat, peacekeeping missions, humanitarian agencies, development arms, specialized organizations. Some of those programs do tangible good, Vaccines, famine relief, refugee shelter. Keep that separate in your mind, I will. But the flagship, the UN's ability to stop wars and prevent atrocities, is a choreography of circular process. You fund forums, not force. You bankroll committees that arrive after disaster, memorialize the dead, and return next year to memorialize the memorial. Try explaining that to a border town under shelling. Good news, in 3 hours we'll have a strongly worded appeal. People don't eat appeals. Appeals don't carry the wounded. Appeals don't bulldoze a road through a blocked crossing to run food through before sunset. Appeals are what you broadcast when you're scared to admit you're powerless. And yes, we all know why the UN is like this. 5 countries sit on a permanent throne with vetoes that can nullify reality. If one of them is implicated, the lights go green for waffle and red for action. Everyone else is a spectator with a placard. Call it realpolitik, call it structure, call it how the world works. Fine. And then admit the consequence. When the worst happens, the best you can hope for is a chorus of adjectives. The institution that carries the word united in its name is engineered to fracture at precisely the fault lines that matter. Ukraine taught you that in real time. A permanent member invades another UN member. The General Assembly votes to condemn. The Security Council debates. Veto, veto, veto. Civilians crouch in the subway while diplomats polish their indignation to a high shine. No NATO-style guarantee, no peace enforcement, just resolutions that read like prayers without a god. Sudan is the masterclass in slow-motion despair. 1 capital, 2 generals, many militias, a population trapped between bullets and starvation. The UN pleads for access. It denounces atrocities. It drafts roadmaps with elegant arrows pointing nowhere. Every month the briefers re-explain the same catastrophe. Every month the killing studies their slides and continues. The Congo should be the final proof, a theatre of the absurd, where a giant UN mission has been present for decades, and armed groups still carve up lives like they're slicing cake. Ask the people who live in the shadow of those white vehicles whether presence equals protection. They'll show you graves that say otherwise. So when the Afghanistan-Pakistan frontier lights up, and the UN issues statements. Forgive me if I skip the applause. I've heard this song. It's a lullaby for grown-ups who don't want to dream of accountability. Now, if you still believe in the UN, not the idea, the actual machine, here's the minimum that would stop me calling it a taxpayer-funded echo chamber. 1. Speed. Not in words, in boots. If you can deploy a peacekeeping mission, deploy it before the cemetery gets a waiting list. If you can't deploy, admit it on day 1. Don't spend a week composing the perfect synonym for deeply. 2. Teeth. Peacekeepers with rules of engagement that protect civilians with force, when force is the only language an armed group speaks. Not observers with binoculars, not patrols that retreat at the first crack of a rifle, because that's not our mandate. Make the mandate match the misery. If you can't, don't pretend. 3. Corridors that aren't optional, humanitarian access baked into ceasefires with a threat matrix attached, obstruct aid, expect consequences that actually alter behavior, sanctions that bite in 24 hours, not 24 weeks, targeted measures that go beyond symbolic travel bans, freeze the money that buys the rockets, freeze the network that moves the illegally imported fuel, that powers the convoys that besiege the towns. If you can map the atrocity in a report, you can map the supply chain that feeds it. Stop the chain, not just the sentence. 4. A Security Council that can't be paralysed by the suspect. If a permanent member is a party to conflict, their veto should not be a magic spell that dissolves reality. Recuse them or suspend their veto on that file. If that requires charter reform, then say so and start the fight. If you can't change it, own the impotence publicly. Don't market paralysis as prudence. 5. Name and shame with precision. No more passive voice about clashes erupted. Rockets don't erupt by themselves. Write the sentence like a witness. X fired Y at Z. If you don't know, say you don't know. If you do, drop the diplomatic fog. 6. Stop conflating presence with protection. A base isn't a shield if the base commander's mandate is to watch. Civilians can't live under your logo. They need to live under your defense. If you can't defend them, don't fly the flag like it's Kevlar. 7. Accountability that starts now, not post-war. Evidence teams embedded early, chain of command mapping underway, while shells are still warm, so that the day after, when the denials start, the record is already armed with names, units, coordinates, orders, not a glossy retrospective after the culprits have retired to villas. 8. Cut the theatre. Retire phrases that mean nothing, gravely concerned, calls upon all sides. Use language that matches the harm. Speak like you've seen the body count, because you have. Reasonable? Absolutely. Feasible? Only if we stop treating the UN like a museum of ideals and start treating it like a tool that either works or doesn't. If the wrench can't loosen the bolt, get a different wrench, or at least admit we've been pretending the bolt is the problem when it's the tool. And yes, before someone interrupts with, but the UN feeds millions, vaccinates children, educates girls, I'll say it myself, those arms of the system matter. Keep them fed. Keep them funded. The humanitarian, health and development agencies do life-saving, measurable work. But don't let the success of UNICEF or the World Food Programme become a PR shield for the failure of the Security Council to secure anything. Don't confuse competence in one building with courage in another. What you and I are sick of is the gap between brand and reality. United Nations sounds like an Avengers sequel. In practice, it's a group chat where half the participants are on mute and the other half post disclaimers. The only assembly is of sentences. Meanwhile, on that border, a mother's phone has no signal. Her son is missing because the market was hit. The clinic ran out of saline an hour ago. The road to the crossing is a geometry of checkpoints. Traders sit on sacks of onions that will rot before the gate reopens. In that moment, the UN doesn't need to be an idea. It needs to be a door that opens and a corridor that stays open, because someone with authority said so and meant it. Let me be painfully clear. I don't hate multilateralism. I hate cosplay. I hate when institutions dress up as muscle and then apologize for being bone. The UN doesn't have to be a miracle worker. It just needs to be honest about what it is and ruthless about where it fails. And if the honest answer, is that it cannot stop wars started by states who don't fear it, then stop charging us like it can. Market the UN as what it truly is. A convener, a data gatherer, a coordinator, a platform for humanitarian logistics, a diplomatic inbox. Price it accordingly. Cut the swagger. If you want more money for more muscle, show the plan for muscles that actually flex. What would that look like in the Afghanistan-Pakistan crisis right now? A daily public sit rep that reads like a firefighter's log, not a poetry reading. Who fired? Where? Who died? Which crossings are shut? How many trucks are stuck? Where the hospitals are overwhelmed? What resources are needed in the next 12 hours? And which party is blocking them? No euphemisms. Publish the names of commanders where verifiable. Offer a peacekeeping option with a mandate that includes civilian protection and rapid reaction. If the parties refuse, say refused out loud. Set up a guaranteed humanitarian lane with pre-positioned convoys. If either side fires on those convoys, trigger a pre-agreed penalty that hurts in a week, not in a year. Make it about fuel, finance, flight permissions, whatever bites fast. If you can't bind the parties to this penalty because the Security Council is a cul-de-sac, tell the world in a single sentence, we cannot enforce protection here because X country will veto it. Make impotence expensive for the veto holder by making it public. And stop the ritual of pretending temporary ceasefires are triumphs. A 48-hour truce is a bandage on a bullet hole. Celebrate it privately if you must. In public, describe it as what it is, a pause under duress. Use the pause to deliver aid, then go back on air with a checklist of what changed materially for civilians. If the answer is nothing, the world should hear nothing. Why am I so brutal about language? Because language is the only currency a powerless institution has. If you won't spend it truthfully, you're bankrupt twice, once in force, once in honesty. Let's widen the lens. Why do people like you and me keep paying for this? Habit mostly. Optimism a bit, fear of the alternative, naked chaos with no forum at all. Fair enough, but the bill is due for honesty. If we're bankrolling an organisation whose primary product in hardwares is statements, then let's price statements at their true value. Don't invoice us like you're selling peace and deliver paragraphs, and spare me the guilt trip about supporting the rules-based order. Rules without enforcement are suggestions. Orders without compliance are quotes on a wall. If the order cannot stop a shell from landing on a school, call it what it is. A hope. Hopes don't need headquarters. Hopes don't need motorcades. So here's my stance, raw and unvarnished. The UN can remain, but it must pick a lane and own it. If it's a humanitarian coordinator, be the best in human history. Move aid like lightning. Build logistics that shame armies. Publish data that saves an hour in the field, not a footnote in a report. If it's a peace enforcer, get a mandate with steel in the spine. Accept that enforcement means confrontation. Stop hiring verbs and start hiring rules of engagement. If the veto blocks that, lead the campaign to change the rules, or lead the confession that you can't. No more theatre. If it's a diplomatic salon, at least be the place where truth gets said first, not last. Retire the passive voice. Say who bombed what. If you can't, say why. If silence is the only safe play, then carry the silence with shame, not pride, and ask for less money while you figure it out. Back to the border, people are dead, people are injured, families are crushed under decisions made in rooms they'll never see, and the UN is, once again, urging restraint. It is the institutional equivalent of a thoughts and prayers tweet, but with more badges. I don't hate the staffers writing those lines. They're doing the job the structure permits. I hate the structure that turns talent into templates. I hate that we live in a century where information moves at light speed, money moves at light speed, weapons move at light speed, and the institution meant to protect civilians moves at the speed of a committee. You asked, why are we paying these people to send emails we could send ourselves? We shouldn't be. Not at this price, not with this pretense. Either build an organization that delivers consequences, corridors, and coverage when the shooting starts, or admit you're a notice board for the world's tragedies and let us fund you like one. Until then, every strongly worded condemnation reads like a confession. We saw, we knew, we said, and nothing changed. The border doesn't care about your verbs. The dead don't either. If the United Nations wants to be more than a microphone in a hurricane, it needs to stop performing empathy and start enforcing outcomes, fewer adjectives, more action, fewer declarations, more protected lives. If you can't guarantee safety, guarantee honesty. Tell the world exactly who blocked what. Name the hands that tied yours. Make cowardice and obstruction visible. That, at least, would be power of a kind, the power of exposure. Until then, don't be surprised when people call the UN useless. It's not cynicism, it's pattern recognition. And I'm done funding patterns that only produce statements and funerals. Build something with teeth or stop pretending you bite. Not right, not left, just real.